Good afternoon. As you know, I'm Travis Smitek, and I'm the chair of the commission. I want to thank you for your interest in your application here. We have you on the list for county court. I believe we've interviewed you several times in the past. We do have some new people on our commission, so if you could just give us an introduction about your background, experience, and qualifications to hold judicial office.
Thank you. Well, for those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Neal Coffman. I currently serve as the Child Support Enforcement Hearing Officer for Volusia County. In this job, I sit on a bench. I make reports and recommendations to judges for orders after hearing cases, and do more or less the work of a judge, but with consent and approval of an actual sitting judge. I started my legal career up in Michigan. Worked for a couple years with the Michigan Attorney General's office as an acting assistant attorney general. Then moved down to Florida after a few years of private practice, a little private practice down here. Eventually got a job with the Department of Children and Families. I was a senior litigation trial attorney, and I worked there for about 4 years, more or less trying TPR cases, some dependencies as well. Basically freeing children from adoption when they've been abused, abandoned, or neglected. More recently, well, I shouldn't say recently, about 16 years ago, I got hired for the current position I have, which is Child Support Hearing Officer. And I think I'd be highly qualified for this job because I deal primarily with pro se litigants. I've learned how to relate to them, control a courtroom full of them, make them understand that while I want to give everybody a fair hearing, I can't give them anything extra just because they're pro se litigants. And I feel that I spent most of my life in public service, and I think this is the next logical progression in my career. But more importantly, I just think I'd be really good at it. I did go up once before, thanks to this commission, and I got to speak with the governor's staff in Tallahassee. And I think it was a good meeting. I think next time I'm going to refocus more on my judicial philosophy, which is that I believe the law should be applied as written. But the hearings are just to get facts. Anybody can do that. Where the judicial art form comes into play is applying those facts to exactly what the law says. Not what you think it ought to be, not what you think is right necessarily, but exactly what the law says. I feel that's very important, and I always have. I acquired that idea in law school, and it never left me. And I think as long as you do that, in the aggregate, the right thing happens.
Why only county court as opposed to both county or circuit?
Candidly, I've put in for this a number of times, as you all know, and that is the only tumble that I have got from this commission. But also, I think it's probably what the commission feels I'm most qualified for because of all my experience with pro se litigants. Do I think I would be a good circuit judge as well? Yes. If I'm appointed to the county bench after a number of years, might I put in for that someday? Possibly. But I think county court was probably my best shot, and I think it's probably where I could be of the most service to the public right now.
What do you think your biggest strength is as a candidate for appointment?
Dealing with pro se litigants and my ability to run a courtroom, I could essentially walk into a courtroom subject to learning all about the body of law that I would be dealing with, but I've acquired the ability over the last 16 years to listen to a case, run it through my knowledge of the body of law, the type of case I'll be hearing, and render a report and recommendation right now. I can do the same thing with a court order. I'm not going to be taking every other case under advisement, going back to chambers, working until midnight, trying to figure out what I should do. I'm going to learn the law wherever I'm assigned, and I'm going to rule from the bench 99% of the time.
What's the biggest challenge in your current role?
Biggest challenge would probably be the number of cases, but that's the other strength I bring to a county bench. I'm hearing probably upwards of 250 cases a month these days, and it's not a problem. I hear the cases get set, the litigants come before me, most of them in person now, occasionally by Zoom, and I just take the facts of each case, apply the facts of the case to the law as written, render a report and recommendation to the judge, clean slate, and move on to the next case, which is kind of the same thing you need to be able to do in county court. I mean, it's kind of the people's court. Most people come before you unrepresented. They're expecting to have their issues resolved, and they're expecting to feel like they've been heard. I've gotten very good at doing that.
I have a question. You follow
Yes.
the law as written. If you have an issue before you and you read the statute, but there's legal precedent, and you don't believe the legal precedents follow the statute, what do?
I follow the statute.
Over the precedent?
If there's a higher court appointed over me that is a binding judicial precedent, then most likely I'll follow the interpretation of the higher court of the law. However, I stand by what I said, that I will follow the law as written in the statute, the plain meaning of the words.
You, for the last 17 years, have predominantly been doing that child support enforcement. How would you get up to speed with the civil laws in county court, criminal laws, when you've been doing that for so long?
I've said this before, I would study a lot, really hard in the beginning. I would also seek the knowledge of other judges, county judges, who are on the bench doing, or who have done what I'm going to be doing. And that's what I did with this job. Is there a learning curve? Sure. Am I a better hearing officer now than I was the first 6 months I was on the job? Absolutely. However, I have no doubts about my ability to completely learn the body of law I'll be dealing with and apply the facts of each case to it.
Any other questions? All right. In closing, anything you want to highlight for us before we deliberate?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you all for the opportunity, and I think everybody probably says that, but I really do mean it. I mean, it means a lot to me that you're all sitting here listening to what I have to say, and your time is valuable too, so I won't waste too much of it, but I really do feel I would be an excellent candidate for this position. I think my experience with pro se litigants is key. I think my ability to adapt to new things is key. I have absolutely no doubts about my ability to do this job, and I would plan to defend it vigorously if I'm selected. If that means hiring a campaign manager, and I think it does, if I get challenged, then that's what I'll do, and I expect to get challenged.
Any questions? So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.